Social skills groups, are they a valuable tool for building connections, or are they just another artificial setting that doesn't translate into the real world? Some say that they're essential for structured learning. Others argue that they miss the mark entirely when it comes to generalization. On this podcast episode, we're diving into the debate. So, should we be using social skills groups, or is it time to rethink how we teach social interaction altogether?
Hi, I'm Shira.
And I'm Shayna.
We're behavior analysts who create weekly content about how to teach kids with autism so that they make real progress. And we create shareable resources to make your job just a little easier. Today's topic is all about social skills groups. And if you want more videos like this, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell to stay updated on new video releases.
So I have been running social skills groups for literally years and years and years. I opened up my first social skills group in 1999. No, maybe it was like 2003, but it was a long time ago. And it was very successful. And it was not successful all at the same time. How can I say that? We literally had a center. It was me and somebody else. We literally had a center for a few years, and we taught social skills groups. That's what we did in an ABA format. And, we took in kids of varying abilities. And, they were usually an hour to an hour and a half classes, usually anywhere from 2 to 5 kids in a class with 1 to 2 instructors. And we got some really great feedback from it. Our data showed that in some of these classes, they really, really worked. And then in other classes, they missed the mark entirely and didn't work at all. I really still truly believe that social skills classes can be the way to go. Shira's had a different experience than I have. And we're actually going to, go off script today, and we are going to really debate whether or not social skills groups are, worth it.
Okay, so here we go.
Here we go. Okay, let's get started. So Shira, you don't love social skills groups.
Yes. So I work in a school setting. So in a school setting, we have so many natural opportunities to teach social skills. But we knew that there were a lot of parents who were looking specifically for social skills groups. So we started running them, and I found that the kids who were coming to our social skills groups, first of all, the skill deficits were not social. Like it was often behavior management issue, or it was some learning challenge, and it was manifesting, the form of it seemed to be social, but the kids really had a lot of underlying challenges. And with only, an hour twice a week or an hour and a half once a week, we really weren't able to get to some of those underlying skills. And it felt like, a little bit too contrived and a little bit too unnatural because this wasn't their natural setting. And they were coming into this, artificial group for an hour a week trying to teach them a skill, but that skill didn't really generalize or go anywhere.
So it really does depend on the learner, and I think it really does depend on the social skills you're trying to teach. So the very biggest thing that I say right from the get-go is, what goals do you want us to teach, and really define what those goals are in a group. If you're looking to, make a kid and who's an introvert and extrovert, that's not going to happen. You're not going to change that. But if you want to teach some, very essential conversation skills or greetings or things like that, a group format can help. The reason I like group formats is because I like control. I'm not sure if you can tell or not, but I find that in a very, social skills group is a very contrived environment. Again, pros and cons with that, but I really do like the fact that I can create more opportunities than what they would actually have in a classroom environment. A classroom environment, they may access it or access some opportunities to be social or not. And if they don't have anybody else in the classroom guiding them through that, they may not learn, or they may learn the wrong contingencies. Whereas in a social skills group, it's really set up so that they'll learn what they are supposed to do, as well as we can get a lot of trials in.
Okay, so let's take this example of, we used to run groups on emotional regulation, and we would go through curriculum, and they'd be able to label all the feelings and act out all the feelings and talk about, their strategies and their responses, and they have a whole toolbox that we'd send home with them. The lessons were great. They really showed that they were, understanding the content. And then they went nowhere because in their classroom, the teacher wasn't aware of this toolbox that they had, or their parent, wasn't aware to help them with the strategy. And as much as we would try to coach and, tell the parents what we were doing and connect with the school, it didn't it didn't really go anywhere because there's only so much, especially with something like regulation. There's always going to be an aspect, at least while they're still learning it, of this co-regulation piece. And so many of the skills that they're learning in social skills require this other person. And if the other person isn't there or they're not learning it in the natural environment, it just gets really challenging to then use those skills outside of this very specific setting.
Yeah, and sure, I actually agree with you, but I would say that that's probably not a challenge of a social skills group. That's a deficit of generalization. And, if you've got a social skills group that is only an hour a week, we need to recognize it's an hour a week. And if these kids are used to getting 20 hours of ABA a week, 1 hour is nothing. So we really do need those essential partners to help us generalize. Those parents, we need to figure out how to do some effective parent coaching, how to get the parents into our social skills classes as well, or send some video home, send some actual handouts, things home with them so that they're able to do that and practice with parents as well as with the school, and making sure that, teachers are on board. I've seen effective social skills where we're teaching emotional regulation, and then if the school's on board, the teacher can have some type of, whether it's zones of regulation or something else, whereby, they have frequent check-ins with their students to say, hey, how are you feeling? Hey, let's practice some of these calm down techniques, etc. But you're right, like we do need to be able to generalize these groups. And if that generalization isn't there, and if that generalization hasn't been planned right from the get-go, then of course your social skills group is going to fail.
I think there's two things that I think are really important in time about social skills groups. The first one is be honest about the skills and the things that we're calling social skills. Are they really, play skills, leisure skills, behavior management or tolerance skills, communication skills? Like, let's be honest about what the skills really are, because I think that then we could either put them in the right group or teach those skills some other way. We don't need to learn, leisure skills in a group, or we don't need to learn communication skills necessarily in a group. So I think that would be the first step. The next thing that I think in order to make this really work, kind of like what Shana was saying, is using the natural environment. It's something that we started doing instead of taking the kids out of their natural environment and teaching them in a group format, is we would bring the group to them. And we have BCBAs who are running groups in the classrooms, but it is required that the staff attend the groups. And the goal is that we're almost kind of training the staff on the content of the group so that the staff can then generalize and use those skills throughout the week, where there is no, goal even that the student is going to master the content of those groups, because 2 half-hour groups a week is, you're not going to master emotional regulation in that format. But what you can do is, now the teacher knows that we're working on identifying our precursors, and we're going to practice that all week. And then that becomes an IEP goal. And so if it becomes something that's part of their natural environment, yeah, I can have it in a group setting. I think it's great to teach amongst a group, but I think it's so important to make it natural and like contextual and functional and all of these things that make goals meaningful.
That is such an awesome idea. I used to have a center within a preschool, and we used to have the younger kids, and we used to do some of that as well in terms of, doing some one-to-one ABA, and then, having them go into the preschool classroom and practice those skills there. And that's when we really saw the generalization. So if possible, definitely bring that social skills group or people within the social skills group to that natural environment to practice that for sure. Um, One thing that I'm going to flip, and I'm actually going to say, when social skills groups do not work. And I've had a group where, like Shira's mentioned before, parents will argue for social skills. I want my kid to learn some social skills and what have you. And they are, a couple kids with, who are complete introverts, and they really do not want to be social. And then you have to put them all in a group together because they all have similar profiles. So say I have 3 or 4 kids who, may or may not be verbal, but really don't have any interest in each other whatsoever, and don't have interest in each other or in any types of common things. That social skills group is doomed right from the beginning. There's nothing that you can do to make these kids social. You're not trying to change them at their core. So be careful with social skills groups like that. What I have done though is, if you've got a kiddo who, is minimally verbal, who, may or may not be that social, and their parent wants a social skills group, I might actually get some kids who are actually very verbal and use them as the peers. So, the bossy peer, get the bossy peer to direct them. And that's when I find that can be successful. But, a bunch of kids with similar profiles who can be very low verbal is not the right way to go.
And I think Shana raised a good point where sometimes the social skills groups is masking, the parents wanting to create a different version of a child where they want them to be social, or they want them to be interested in things that the family's interested in. I want them to play sports because sports is really important. So they're in a sports group, but the child isn't interested in sports. And so I think being careful about what's really the goal here and involving the learner and involving the individual and really being honest with, the family, the parents, the learner about like what our goal is in having something like a social skills group. It is not to change anybody. It is not to make kids with autism, have eye contact and joint attention and learn rote responding. But it's really about accomplishing their goals or their own values towards something that's important to them. And that's again why I think it's so valuable to happen in a natural environment, because that natural environment will give you so many cues as to what's going to be valuable. You can ask them, you can look at their setting and see like what would make them more successful in this environment. And social skills shouldn't just be about, back and forth conversation that we're teaching, a learner to have because somebody outside of their life decided it's important for them to have back and forth conversation. I have a lot of learners who I'll go and visit them in their classroom and try to talk to them, and they'll be like, I don't want to talk to you right now. And I'll be like, totally fine. Like, that's great. Thank you for telling me. And I want to stay away from social skills groups that really force these ideas on our learners, where it is our external expectation that you're going to want to play sports and you're going to socialize and you're going to love conversation. And that's really not the goal of having a social skills group.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's where ACT comes in. If you've got learners who are verbal and can tell you, you can go through a little bit of ACT, and it doesn't have to be in a formal way. It can be just be like, okay, what do you guys want to learn in this social skills group? Okay, we're stuck here together. What are we doing? I wouldn't quite phrase it like that, but involve the students in their goal setting. Hey, you know what? We're going to do this, this, and this. Or hey, here's all these choices we can do. Which ones do you want to do? And the more you can involve the students in the goal setting, I think the more successful your social skills groups are going to be. I have a really great experience with social skills groups, and I think this is why I argue all the time for social skills groups. Like I said, it doesn't work for every single student, but for the students I find that it does work well with would be those, intermediate kids, intermediate to advanced kids who have some conversation skills, who have similar interests, and you can put them in a group together, and they may not start off liking each other, but if they're all working, with the same instructors, they have, they've all been in ABA together, they know, they understand the token system, they understand some ABA technology, but they also, want to, do well and have, a few conversation skills, what have you. Where I've seen it really thrive is actually with friendships with each other. And, social skills groups in and of themselves, once a week or 1 hour a week, may not get you to your goal because of that lack of generalization, that, lack of quantity of hours. But what it might get you is some really nice friendships. So think of that as well. And that could be the only goal of your social skills group. So your social skills group could be, hey, let's get together once a week and just play video games, and that's that. Or it could be, hey, we're going to get together once a week under the farce of learning some conversation and learning this and that, and maybe some of that'll stick. But really what I've seen happen is a lot of kids rooting for each other and saying, wow, that was really great. I think that person needs a token. Hey, you know what? They could be doing this on their video, and that kind of thing. And I think it's really great because if the same kids are in the same social skills classes over time, they develop those friendships.
Fair point, but just like call it video game group.
All right, so that was Cher and I arguing off the cusp, not really arguing, let's say debating, right? But we really did debate, why we would recommend a social skills group or not recommend a social skills group. I think really ultimately, Cher and I are probably more on the same page than we think, in terms of social skills groups. They're very beneficial in some situations and not so beneficial in other situations. So hopefully you took something from that.
Click the link on or around this video to join the behavior resource. In there, you'll find a comprehensive social skills assessment and various programs to teach social skills, whether it's in a group format or one-to-one. You'll also have access to CEUs on teaching social skills.
We also encourage you to subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss any future videos, and leave a like and comment below if you have further questions.